What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Behind the Glass Sports Podcast. Thanks for tuning in, whether you're watching via YouTube or catching us via audio. I think by now you know where you can find us: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, Google Podcasts, and the rest of the casts and breakers and overcasts and Publix and all that good stuff. I'm not going to even go through that today. It's just too much of a tongue twister for this Tuesday morning. But if you want to follow us on Twitter, at Brandon_Stoll. Yes, for Brandon.
Yeah, yes.
As Stephen Priest Jr. for myself. For some reason, that really just threw me off. It took me for a loop. We got a lot to get to on the show today. Obviously, the Nuggets bounce back game yesterday. Huge for them. We'll get to that. Also, how concerned should we be about these three Nuggets starters' injuries? Michael Malone, before the game yesterday, had some revealing comments that, well, had me mashing in my panic button. We'll talk about that. Also, a big move for the Denver Broncos occurred yesterday that could really change a lot of things for their season. And should it make Elway in the front office regret not taking a specific position in the draft? We'll get to all that today. But first, we have to talk about these Denver Nuggets because I'm going to be quite honest with you. Yesterday, I did not have high hopes. I didn't get to watch the game. It was an early game. Usually, these games are at night. In the bubble, it's like NCAA style, so they're going to play whenever. And yesterday's game was 2 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. I got to watch it at work for a total of like 7 minutes because we have Comcast before we got the blackout screen of we can't broadcast this game.
I don't know if I should be saying this, but I have a link for you.
You have plugs?
I may or may not have a link for you. So
I may remind me not have a clickable word underline area that you can hit on.
Yeah.
Brandon can't incriminate himself.
But yeah, next time you can't watch the game, let me know.
Well, that'll be tomorrow, so at 2 p.m. So I might have to have you send that thing my way. Either that or download DirecTV because I have DirecTV. And recently I deleted the app, right? Yeah, well, recently I deleted the app because I'm like, I never use the app, and I have to update it all the time. So I'm like, I'm just gonna delete it. And of course, yesterday I was like, I need the app, download it, and then I forgot what our password is to DirecTV, so I couldn't watch the game. So I'm sitting there following on Twitter like a noob, like the rest of us, and we're all angry because we can't watch the Nuggets play. And of course, MPJ goes off in the first. And
maybe you shouldn't watch.
Honestly, that did cross my mind. I'd be lying to you if that did not cross my mind yesterday, because I was like, when I watch, Kelly Olynyk drops 34. When I don't watch, MPJ drops 37. But I did watch like the last minute and a half of overtime, and they still won. So I don't know. I think that's fine. But
I think they had everything handled at that point. So
right. Well, I mean, I was keeping up through GameCast, and it was pretty sweaty throughout the entire time. They were up 10 at one point, and they were down 10 at one point. Like, that game was just back and forth. I mean, lead was changing back and forth. But regardless, a huge bounce back game for the Denver Nuggets. They come away with the overtime victory yesterday, 121-113 over the Oklahoma City Thunder. They just have a stranglehold on the division these past 2 seasons. Like, when it comes to the division opponents, I think they're 11-1 this year. They just do not lose for whatever reason. And this team, even then as well, as much as we like to get on them and get down on them, man, they certainly have ways to bounce back from adversity. Whenever they get kicked in the Nar Dogs, they just kick right back the next night. And you just got to love that. Going through the stats, which was night and day from the Miami Heat game. You had 4 starters in the plus when they were all in the minus. Obviously, Jokic, slow start to the game yesterday. When I looked at the stats, he was 1 of 5 and 0 of 3 from the 3-point line. And I was like, oh, God, here we go. And then he finishes 30 points, 10 of 21, 0 of 5 from 3. Very concerning. But he had 30, 10, and 12. And then, of course, the star of the night was MPJ. 37, 12 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 steal, 1 block. I mean, he was a man on a mission last night. And I tweeted it out, I believe, before the game. I was like, MPJ, he needs to come out and ball because he did not show out in that first game. And right off the bat, the first bucket, MPJ, they got him going. I think he had 12 points in the first quarter, or 12 of the first 18 points for the Nuggets or something like that. 12 out of their 18 points. Regardless, huge game from the Nuggets yesterday. What did you take away from that game?
Yeah, I mean it was MPJ for I would say 3.5 quarters, and then they went to Jokic. But I'm gonna get to the bad here first because there are still some concerns about the guys who are playing. We're not gonna talk about the guys who aren't playing. We'll get to that in a little bit, but the guys that are playing, the big one for me, 7 of 25 shooting from three, 28%, and 4 of those 7 made threes came from MPJ. So everyone else needs to step up. Bol was 1 for 1. Troy Daniels 1 for 3. Grant 0 for 3. Morris 0 for 1. Jokic 0 for 5. Craig 0 for 4. And Millsap 1 for 2. So the only other guys that made a 3 other than MPJ, Bol, Troy Daniels, and Paul Millsap. And they only made 1 each. So that's concerning. And that needs to improve if they want to get past even the first round. They have to be able to hit threes. The next one is free throws. They only were 77% from the free throw line. Jokic missed a big one at the end that could have cost them the game. Paul Millsap missed 2. Torrey Craig was 0 for 2. Torrey Craig had an awful game. Plumlee was 1 for 4. Dozier was 1 for 2. So, when you miss 9 free throws, coming down to the end of the game, you should have won in regulation if you would have just hit 80% of your free throws. So that's the other thing. Other than that, I mean, the effort was there. The offense looked a lot better, and I think a lot of that has to do with MPJ. But overall, defensively they were solid. Just again, I mean, I think when guys get healthy, I don't know how you keep Michael Porter from not starting. I think from here on out he needs to be the starter at the 3. He's and he has to be consistent. He can't for the next 2 games put out a dud like he did against Miami. He also doesn't have to put up 37 points and 12 rebounds. Give us 20 and 7. 20.7 rebounds. Maybe 2 of those 7 rebounds are offensive rebounds. A steal block like he did last night, and in the plus for the plus minus. So if he does that every night, he should be starting from here on out. Even if Will gets healthy, I mean, just like last year, Will came back from injury and his spot was taken. It kind of sucks, but that's what happens when you get hurt. It's the next man up, and if the next man up is playing well, you can't just take him right back down just because you're back, right? So I think at this point, as long as MPJ keeps on playing the way he is, he probably should start. And yeah, I mean those are really my big takeaways. The last thing, I mean, with Jokic, he is slowly starting to kind of get me on the bandwagon as far as he can be the best player on the team. In order for them to win a championship. And my thing has always been centers. You cannot have your center be your best player if you want to win a championship. Here's the thing. He can create his own shot. It's weird. That little shuffle shot that he had.
Soundboard shuffle.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All you have to do is get him the ball. He can take that shot. He creates it. It's the one way he can create a shot without getting into the post. I mean, that's all you have to do. And late in games, if they don't double him, he can close it out. But that's the thing. If they don't double him, if they do start to double him, that's when you do need that second guy. But the more, throughout the game last night, or yesterday, I guess, when I was watching, the farther we got in through it, through the fourth quarter and overtime, and I believe Hastings said at one point, man, he looks like Tim Duncan out there. It's interesting how this team, and I thought about it, a couple of years ago, how they were building the team, but ever since they got MPJ, it kind of changed a little bit. But early on, when they had Jokic, Jamal, and Gary as that trio that we really liked, to me, it was like, okay, well, they are building this team like San Antonio built around Tim Duncan, They went out and got Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili. Manu was more of their clutch shooter, and early on, Gary was hitting clutch shots. He had that obviously the buzzer beater against Oklahoma City, but down the stretch, he was a guy that they would go to, at least a couple years ago. So that to me was how they were building this team, and the more and more I watch Jokic, the more and more I see Tim Duncan in him. Like he's crafty. He's not he's not athletic, but Tim Duncan led that team, and he. Most people call him the best power forward of all time. He played a lot of center, and they were able to win around him. So, again, that was the early 2000s, a different game. But, I mean, it's very, very similar what he does. And even Tim Duncan was a good passer. Jokic is on another level when it comes to passing, but he's a guy that, again, he has to be able to create his own shot, like a Tim Duncan, like a Dirk, where you can go down to, in the final couple minutes, and he can he can score without having to get into the post, right? Late in the game in overtime, that's what he did. He played more bully ball, but that shuffle shot, the just being able to hit threes, like if he can do those things, they can win with him being the best player. But again, when he gets doubled, they need someone to step up, and that's where Jamal or MPJ comes in. And I tweeted out last night, but Jokic didn't start off the game great, and superstars don't have to start off the game great, right? It's how you finish. But you need other guys to step up to keep you in the game, and that's what MPJ did last night. No one else could do anything offensively. He was the only guy offensively until Jokic started to take over that was carrying the team, that could do anything, really. Monte stepped up late in the fourth, but other than that, it was all MPJ for 3.5 quarters. And that, obviously, when the other three guys come back, that needs to change. But until then, if they want to win games for these next, couple of games until someone gets back, he's going to have to be that guy.
Yeah, I agree. And it's a good comparison. I like that. I've never really thought about that Tim Duncan one. I think Tim was obviously probably a way better defensive player than Nikola is. But Nikola we've agreed that he's improved, and he's at least
much improved. I mean, defensively yesterday he was fantastic, and there was a play where he was moving his feet, and I'm like, whoa, okay. And I think losing some of that weight helped, but he's much better. He's not gonna get blocked shots, but he had 2 steals yesterday. So I mean, I'm fine with instead of getting 2 or 3 blocks a game, if you can get 2 or 3 steals a game, that's fine.
And that's what I was gonna say. His hands are his best defensive asset. Yeah. He's able to deflect passes. He's good for at least 1 to 3 a game, where he just gets a key deflection and it's a steal going the other way. I don't know if Tim Duncan has the offensive post moves that Jokic has, because Jokic just seems to have just a never-ending repertoire. I don't know. I don't remember Tim necessarily being. I mean, he was good on the block. Don't get me wrong, but what I remember Tim for is mainly that 2 dribbles into your chest and fading the other way and banking it off the glass, or his set 15-foot shot, where if you left him open, that was almost cash every time.
But that's him creating the shot.
Right. That's not to say that he couldn't, work in the post, because he could. I just think Jokic is just so great with his footwork, and his touch is great. But that's interesting, though. And the Sombor shuffle might be the ugliest, slowest step, sidestep jump shot in the NBA. But man, has he just put it in so many big spaces. Joel Embiid has gotten it. Yeah. Steven Adams has gotten it. Rudy Gobert has gotten it. Karl Anthony Towns has gotten it. Oh, that's funny. All these guys that are listed above Jokic as being the best center in the NBA. How many of those have game winners over these guys?
It's another version of Dirk's step back off 1-footer. Yeah,
it is, and it is. He's on 1 foot, and the reason that was developed is when he rolled his ankle. He just messed around in the practice field trying to do that, And now it's his patent move, the Sombor Shuffle, which I'm going to create a shirt with the Sombor Shuffle. So merch coming soon, everybody. You'll see it soon. I'm going to have it. I'm going to order one. I swear. I'm going to make it if it's not already made. But no, I mean, it's a great move, that Sombor Shuffle. It's so dangerous. I don't know if I'm there yet to say that they can still win with him as the best player. I think I can be open to that argument. And as much as I love Nikola Jokic, and people know this, I just don't know if I can go there yet, because he's still too inconsistent at times in terms of taking the game over. I think he's getting more and more better at that. But I mean, they really could have used that in that Miami game. And I get they were doubling him and forcing the ball out of his hands, and maybe that's really just when he needs anybody just to hit a shot.
Well,
Which
and
nobody
that's the
could in that
thing.
game.
They couldn't double him yesterday
Right.
because Porter was killing him.
Right.
So, it's like at that point is pick your poison. When if when Jamal gets back, and that gives you 3 guys that you have to worry about instead of just the 2-man game between Jamal and Jokic, and Jamal being inconsistent, right? So if Jamal's consistent and Porter is, say, inconsistent, but every other night or every 3 nights he does that, where he puts up 37 and 12, that puts so much pressure on the opposing teams to where you can't necessarily double Jokic. It won't work because the other 2 guys, at least one of them, and if both of them are killing you, you're screwed. But if one of them are, you can't double Jokic, and then if you can't double Jokic, you're screwed. Either way. Right. So that he needs, again, and every superstar needs help. Jordan needed Pippen and Rodman and Horace Grant and all, on and on and on. LeBron needed D Wade, Chris Bosh, Anthony Davis, Kyrie, whatever. Everyone needs that second or even maybe 2 guys to where if they are getting doubled or they are having an off night, someone else can step up and make the job a little bit easier. And when you make the job a little bit easier for Nikola Jokic, all that is just letting him go one-on-one instead of him getting doubled because they can't double him. Then he gives you 30, 12, and 10. So that's, and he did that going 0 for 5 from 3. So right. You take out the 5 threes that he missed, he went 10 for 16. So that's the key for this team is you need at least one other guy to step up like MPJ did yesterday to allow Jokic to become your go-to guy.
And can I just say too, I just feel so bad for Steven Adams because I was just watching some of the highlights back last night, and he just seems to kill Steven Adams every time. Yeah. And Steven Adams is like a legitimate defensive player of the year candidate, but every time he just has no answer for Jokic every time they seem to play. And there was a shot on the under the basket where Jokic is bullying him. He's on the right block and he's bullying him. And he gives him a fake, but he goes underneath the hoop and puts his elbow right into Adams's rib cage and goes up and under and lays it up. And Steven Adams was just like, I just can't. And there's another play where he bullies him and knocks over Steven Adams and gets the layup. Yeah. And I'm just like, Steven Adams is not a small guy. Like he's 6'10", 6'11", and he just has no answer for Nikola. And then of course the Sombor Shuffle in his eyes. And he's at that point, I'm just like, I just don't know.
All the questions about if Jokic can play bully ball. As skinny Jokic, yeah, he's fine. he might
not be able to push off a little bit harder. You're not flying as much when he hits you because 450-pound Jokic, when he throws that thing into you, you're flying backwards. Doesn't matter who you are. Now there's a little resistance. Like okay, I'm still here, but he can still throw that little chicken wing into you, and you're falling down. So no, huge game from him. As far as, and you mentioned it, Michael Porter Jr. possibly being a starter. That's the interesting conversation. And again, it's one where I don't know if I'm there yet because we saw, obviously we know what he can do. That right there last night, that's the ceiling. That's what you can expect from MPJ. If all things are firing and clicking on all cylinders.
He took 16 shots.
Right. That's his potential right there.
Like
what it is. But there's also the low side of the injuries and the Miami Heat game where he takes too many of those contested jump
Yeah.
shots and he goes 2 of 7, 2 of 9. I don't know if I'm there yet with him. Now, if I'm the Nuggets, maybe I'm like, Will, that knee still looks kind of inflamed. Let's just give you 2 more games. Let's play it really safe because I want to see how he does it. Now, obviously, like you said, we don't have to expect him to put up 37 and 10 or 12, whatever it was that he had. But if he goes 22, 27, 25, gives you anywhere from 5 to 10 rebounds
Be
in
that
those
second guy for
games,
Jokic. That's all you
then
have to do.
okay. Then that's where it's like, okay, Will Barton's maybe like, I don't know, I'm just guessing Will's averages are maybe between 15 to 19 points, maybe 3, 4
Uh,
rebounds a game.
let's see.
I'm just kind of spitballing where he's at. But if just based off potential, I would start MPJ first. But the inconsistency is the part that scares me. So I want to wait at least maybe like 2 more games on that. Which, if you go off of Michael Malone's comments yesterday when he's asked,
Mm-hmm.
"Hey Malone, if this was a playoff game, would the 3 Jamal, Gary, and Barton be out there?" And he said no, they'd still be out, which is really concerning because for Jamal it's a hamstring, and those soft tissue issues injuries, those are tricky ones. So I wouldn't be surprised if Jamal misses the majority of these games. With Will, right knee inflammation, that's hit and miss. And then with Gary, anything around the pelvic area with
Yeah.
Gary, that just has me terrified. Core, hip, that just screams caution to me.
That's the most concerning one. And for me, I mean, obviously, number one, you need Jamal back. He was out there yesterday though in pregame, warming up. I think it's more precautionary for him. I think if it was a playoff game, he would play. As far as Will and Gary go, though, those two guys, that's a little different. They really need. If Will Barton is coming off the bench, I think that is like, it's not necessarily like I don't want him to start because I want MPJ to start, but with Will coming off the bench, I think that just gives you another leader coming off the bench instead of a young guy. And I think that actually helps the bench unit a lot. With MPJ, and you talked about it, he was shooting a lot of threes, contested threes against the Heat. But what they did yesterday, his first 2 or 3 buckets were layups and dunks.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just cutting to the rim. He is probably the best cutter on the team. It might actually, Gary is probably the best. MPJ is second. The way he cuts to the rim, because teams are so terrified of him hitting a 3 in their eye that they don't, they stay up on him. So all he has to do, just cut to the rim. Jokic is gonna find you, and that's what he figured out yesterday. And so if you do that early on in the game, if he starts instead of Will and have Will come off the bench, this is why I like MPJ starting, because you can get him the ball early. If he can just a couple layups early in the game, maybe a 4 or 5 minute stint, put Will back in. I'm not saying MPJ getting 30 minutes a game. I'm saying maybe he starts but only getting 25. But the reason why I want him to start is to get those early buckets, to get him some confidence. That way throughout the game, he's consistent. He's shooting at a high clip. And one thing that he did during the regular season in that stretch, actually, that he was playing really well, even though he wasn't starting, he was shooting at such a high. He was shooting, I think, 60 from the field and almost 50% from 3. So that's what I want. He doesn't necessarily need to play 30 minutes per game because those numbers are going to lower. But if he plays 20, or maybe I would say 25 minutes per game, and even starting to get him going, and that way he's shooting maybe 7 for 11, 8 for 12, right around that range, hitting 3 or 4 threes a game. That's the MPJ that they need. They don't need him to be getting, like last night. I mean, he had 44 minutes. They don't need him to play that many minutes. So when Will comes back, either way, whether Will starts or not, right when MPJ comes in the game, they need to get him the ball early on to get him that confidence. Just like Jamal. What have we always said about Jamal the last 2-3 years? Make your first shot. Make your, if he can make his first or maybe his first 2 shots, he's gonna be going throughout the game. And that's just a young player in the NBA trying to figure things out, right? If you can just get them the ball, have them, hit a couple of shots early on, they're going to have that confidence, and until they get to, maybe 25, 26 years old, to where even if they miss out their first couple of shots, they're fine. They'll figure it out. But early on, when they're 22, 23, 24, I think that's something that's really important for those guys to be able to hit your first couple of shots. I mean, look at Jokic. Dude goes 0 for 5 from 3. He was off throughout, most of the game or didn't shoot a lot. But late in the fourth, he got it going. Well, that's because Jokic is in his prime. He's good to go. He knows how he knows how to kind of turn that switch on. Whereas young guys don't necessarily know how to do that. So they need that confidence early on in the game. So that's kind of why I'd rather see MPJ start. And I think Malone kind of sees that. And one of Malone's comments too yesterday was, because after the Miami game, MPJ texted Malone a few times and was like, hey, I'm gonna play better. Stick with me. I know I can play better. And Malone was like, you're not going anywhere. I'm sticking with you from here on out. So that's interesting. And I don't know if that's more of I'm sticking with you, you're going to be getting 20 minutes a game, or if that's I'm sticking with you at the starter position and you're going to be getting 25 to 30 minutes a game. So we'll kind of see, but if he continues to play the way he did yesterday, there's no way they can take him off the starting lineup.
About this. When Will comes back, why can't we not roll out a starting lineup and when all these guys come back, Jamal Murray, Gary Harris, Will Barton, Michael Porter Jr., and Nikola Jokic? I mean, MPJ's big enough at 6'10" to play the 4. You're obviously going to stretch out the floor a lot. I mean, if you want scoring and the Marriott, it's not the Hampton 5, it's not what Golden State had, but the Marriott 5, which is still a nice 5. I mean, that's scoring on scoring right there. I don't know why Malone wouldn't consider that. Now, obviously, your bench would kind of take a hit in terms of scoring, but hey, Bol, let's put him there. So off the bench, you have Monte Morris, Jeremy Grant, Mason Plumlee, Paul Millsap, Bol. Why not do, or some variation of that? Maybe you don't want 3 guys, Jeremy Grant, Millsap, and Mason Plumlee on the floor at the same time, but I mean, you could stagger those minutes.
The only reason why I don't want Millsap, and Millsap gets a lot of hate. I was looking at some comments on Facebook too. He gets a lot of hate, and I get it. He's making $30 million a year. But man, he had to play late in the game yesterday. Well, actually 2. One against Chris Paul, and then one I think it was Shea. But the one against Shea on the baseline, Shea put up a head fake and then drove right, and he forced. I mean, the ball ended up bouncing off of Millsap's foot, but Millsap stuck with him. And late in games, you really need a guy like that. And I think to start off games too, I don't necessarily want a track meet. Defense coming off the bench isn't usually something I'd rather have. I'd rather have the defense start because it puts you. It kind of, if you can start off the game playing tough defense, I think that gives maybe the guys that don't necessarily play great defense. It makes them step up a little bit, but you need a good balance too. And the thing is, right now with Gary, Will, and Millsap starting at those 3 middle positions, with those 3 guys, there's not a lot of offense. You have Gary who's not shooting the ball well, and not shooting three well at all. He was a little bit towards right before the break, but and then Will, I mean, his numbers. I'm looking at right here is 15 points per game, 45 from the field, 37 from three. It's solid, but it's not something that for your third best offensive player in your starting lineup. I don't know. I think I want a little bit better from him. And then with Paul, I mean, again, offensively, you're not going to him a lot, but what he can give you on the block and with the offensive rebounds and maybe even a corner three here and there, I think you do. I think he's perfect at the four to start. So the only other option to me, if you can't let Paul, keep Paul off the floor, well, I don't really want to take Gary off the floor either, at least off the starting lineup, because I want his defense. Even though he's not shooting the ball well, we see it with Torrey Craig defensively. Him on smaller guards does not work. So I'd rather have Gary in the starting lineup to maybe, if they do have to play, say, Oklahoma City in the first round, I want Gary on Chris Paul, because no one could really stick with Chris Paul yesterday. So that's kind of, so I want Gary to start. The only guy that really is movable off that starting lineup, in my opinion, is Will, because he's not great at anything, but he's solid. And he's been solid for the last 2 years, and it's worked just fine. But you can get a little bit more on both ends of the floor if you start MPJ. Offensively, I think you get a lot more, but defensively, you get his length. And MPJ had a couple of plays yesterday where he bought, weak side, his block that he had came from the weak side, and he's a solid defender coming in to help because of his length, because he can block shots and his aggressiveness. But not only that, but on the offensive end, his rebounding. He is so active on the offensive glass that you start the game off like that. If a team comes in and maybe they're a little flat to start, MPJ's gonna kill them on the offensive glass. And he's going to get a couple early on in the game, and that's going to give you a couple extra buckets. So that's where I think that starting lineup of Jamal, Gary, MPJ, Millsap, and Jokic, I think that is probably the perfect starting lineup for this team going forward. Because I think it's a perfect balance between offense and defense. It gives you three guys offensively that can create their own shot. And look, Will can create his own shot. I get it, but I think MPJ is just on another level. It's that, and he might not be as consistent as Will here, throughout the rest of the season and maybe next. But I think with the offensive rebounding, with his length, his 3-point shooting consistency, I think that gives you a little bit more than Will can give you. And then defensively, his length. So, I think overall, he's a little bit better than Will. I just think you need, at the shooting guard position and at your power forward position, I think you do need Gary and Paul for that defensive end.
It'll be interesting to see how it plays out in terms of how MPJ could potentially crack into the starting lineup, if at all possible. I mean, we've seen Malone do it last year in the playoffs. I mean, Barton was struggling. He went to Torrey Craig. When he felt like he needed to go back to Barton, he did. So I wouldn't be shocked if he makes a decision, if MPJ continues to play well in the minutes that he's given while Barton is out, if we see Will go back to the bench and MPJ gets in, or there's some shuffling of the lineup there. But overall, a huge win for the Nuggets yesterday with that win, and it really helps that Utah keeps losing. So that helps the Nuggets out. And they've actually dropped a seed now. I didn't see that. So they are now the 5 seed, and Houston is now the 4, which is interesting. So if the playoffs started today, that would be the 4-5 matchup, is Houston and Utah. Was Houston at the 6 seed?
I think so.
they were 6, right? Because if that's the case, they hopped both Oklahoma City
Yeah.
and Utah.
Well, they were all tied though too. Like they were
Right.
all within like either
A
half a
game.
game or a game.
Yeah. Because now, when you look at the standings today, it's obviously the Lakers at 1, the Clippers at 2, the Nuggets are at 3 at 44 and 23. Houston is now 4th at 42 and 24. Utah at 5 at 42 and 25, and Oklahoma City at 41 and 25 at the 6th seed. So if the playoffs ended today, the Nuggets would get that same Oklahoma City Thunder team, ideally healthy Denver Nuggets, going up against the Oklahoma City Thunder.
And that's a good
But
matchup for Denver. That because no
man,
one
Chris
on
Paul
no
scares me though.
Yeah, Chris
He's
Paul
so
scares
good.
me, but other than that, no one can stop Jokic. And apparently, MPJ has a good matchup against Oklahoma City. So I'm going to take that. I don't want to play Dallas. I refuse. Utah, I would take Utah. But again, I think Rudy Gobert can bother Jokic a little bit more than Steven Adams can. And I would take Houston as well, even though I know James Harden and Russ are scary. I just don't think anyone can stop Jokic. So, and I think MPJ would be a good matchup against Houston as well. So, again, I think the only team that really scares me is Dallas, and the only reason is because they have a lot of bigs that can kind of take Jokic out of the game. And not only that, but they can clog the lane to where maybe MPJ doesn't get a couple easy buckets. And they have a couple wing guys who can kind of stick with him. So, I don't know. I think Jamal would have a good matchup against Dallas. Jamal might have a harder time against Oklahoma City and Houston. I think he'd be fine against Utah. So, I don't know. I guess it depends, but I don't want to see Dallas. I'd rather not see Houston. If they can get Utah or Oklahoma City in that first round, I think that's the perfect matchup for them. And honestly, I think Utah will probably drop to 7, or maybe Utah might drop to 7. They're only, I guess they're 3 games ahead of Dallas though. I don't know. 3 games is a lot right now with only 6 games to go. So. It might, you know what? Dallas might stay at 7, which is really surprising. I think they're a little too far back in the beginning to really catch up. So it might be. If I had to guess, I'm gonna guess Utah is probably gonna be the Denver's first round matchup. Utah does not look good.
And I'll take that too. I mean, if it's Utah, that's the team. If I had to choose, if I'm picking any of these lower seeded teams, from Utah, Oklahoma City, Dallas, or Memphis. Well, obviously, if we could get Memphis, I don't know how that would happen, but if we could get Memphis, sure, I'll take Memphis as well. But
I don't
obviously,
think
that's
that's
not going to happen.
possible. I don't think
No, it's not going to happen.
they're 10
But
games.
if it was,
They're 10 games
I'd take
behind.
right, and they're 32 and 36.
Yeah.
But of the ideal matchups, whether it's Houston, Utah, Oklahoma City, or Dallas, obviously, if I had to rank it, I'd probably go Utah, OKC. Utah, OKC, Houston, Dallas in terms of which ones I'd love to see the most. And Utah may be a potential. I don't know if they'll drop that far. But
Well,
like you
they're
said,
only half a game ahead of Oklahoma City.
yeah, and they're a team that's kind of in flux right now. Again, they're missing
Mhm.
their second leading scorer. He's not coming
Right.
back. Like the Nuggets are getting their guys back. Bogdanovich is not coming back for Utah. I mean, he broke his hand, and that's a team that really offensively, other than Donovan Mitchell and I guess Joe Ingles to an extent, I mean, there's no one that you can really say, "Oh God, that guy scares me." Rudy Gobert is not a threat offensively. Royce O'Neal, I mean, he's a nice 3-and-D guy, but other than that, I mean, can you expect him to go out and drop 20 every game? I don't think so. So it's going to be interesting to see what team the Nuggets get, and they have San Antonio tomorrow at 2 p.m. We'll see Derek White, a guy we're very familiar with, for them. And that's a team you can't overlook in San Antonio. Even though they're not what they once were, they're scrappy. They'll
And
still
they're
fight
playing
till the
well.
end.
They're playing.
Yeah.
They've been one of the surprise teams in the bubble. Utah, by the way, they have Memphis tomorrow, San Antonio on Friday, Denver on Saturday, Dallas on Monday, and then San Antonio again. So I wouldn't say Utah's schedule is brutal. Just looking at it really quick, but the way San Antonio is playing, the fact that Utah has to play San Antonio twice, and Denver, and I don't know. I wouldn't be shocked if Utah only won one of their next 5 games. And if that's the case, they might drop to 7. At that point, let's see.
That'd be brutal.
If they go 1-5, I think Dallas would have to go 4-2. Yeah, because they're 2.5 games, so they would have to catch up on 3 games. So yeah, so Dallas would have to go 4-2, which Dallas, they have Sacramento, the Clippers, the Bucks, Utah, Portland, and Phoenix. Oh yeah, they're not going 4-2. Never mind. They're losing to the Clippers, the Bucks. Portland's playing really well. That Utah game is gonna be big. Yeah, I think Dallas is stuck at 7.
Yeah, which is not ideal for them because that's a matchup with the Clippers in the first round.
Yeah.
And I as great as Luka is, I don't think anybody's beating the Clippers.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing too.
5 through 8, you're racing to get out of that 7 and 8 seed. You do not want any parts of the LA team.
Here's the thing: if Dallas loses 2 more games, and we're going down to the last 2 games of the seeding games, and say the Nuggets are all of a sudden maybe half a game ahead of the Clippers, or maybe right behind the Clippers, and Dallas is locked into 7, which could happen within the next 3 games. If I'm Denver, I'm losing on purpose. Because you don't want the 2 seed against Dallas. And with home court not being a thing, you don't need the 2 seed against the Clippers in the second round. So if it comes down to that, the Nuggets will be losing on purpose late, the last, or they'll go ahead and rest Jokic, Jamal, in the last 2 games. So it's going to be interesting.
Losing, I don't see the Clippers losing to anybody.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what their schedule is.
Especially if Paul George is playing the way he's playing.
They're a game. I like how you put that in. They're a game and a half ahead of Denver. So Denver would have to, win 2 more. Than LA. LA has Phoenix. They're not losing that one. Dallas, we'll see. Portland, we'll see. Portland's playing pretty well. Brooklyn, Denver, and then Oklahoma City. That Denver. So when Denver plays the Clippers, that's the second to last game for both teams. That's a big one. You might see Denver just be like, yeah, we're gonna take Jokic out for today. That's gonna be an interesting
even
one.
If they kept him in, the result would be the same. So there's no way they're beating the Clippers.
I don't know. That's those last 2 games though for Denver, because the last 2 are the Clippers and Lakers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those last 2, I'm gonna be very interested to see if they roll out their full roster.
2 of the last 3. It's Lakers, Clippers, and Toronto.
Okay, so yeah, the Lakers and Clippers, maybe more specifically the Clippers. That will be interesting to see if they roll out their full lineup against those 2 teams. If they don't need a win. Because if they don't need a win, I mean, I'd be willing to bet a decent amount of money that they rest guys. If they screw up these next 3 games, though, and they lose maybe 2 out of the 3, they're going to need to win those games against the 2 LAs. But if they beat San Antonio, if they beat Portland and then Utah, which are all very winnable games, even with 3 starters out, then if they win 2 of those, they probably have the 3 seed more so locked up. They might need the Toronto game in the last game of the season, but I wouldn't be shocked if they rest a couple guys against the 2 LA teams. You don't want to show everything. Remember, everyone's in the bubble. Everyone's watching everyone. So, I don't know.
I think they need 1 more win to lock up a top 6 seed for sure. I'm pretty sure I saw that on Twitter earlier. I don't know how many they need to lock up that 3 seed, but
let's see.
Regardless,
they're
as long as
game
you don't
and a half
match up with
ahead of
Dallas,
Houston.
Yeah, as long as you don't match up with Dallas or the 2 LA teams, I'll take whatever's after that.
Yeah.
But that's just going to be the tough part. Hopefully tomorrow, though, we can see a replicated performance. Maybe we get a Jamal sighting, or a Barton sighting. I'm not too encouraged about Gary. Not sure where that's going to go.
I think Jamal will be the first back, the way he was warming up yesterday.
We'll see. Hopefully that's the case. But before we wrap the show today, huge breaking news for the Broncos yesterday as starting right tackle Juwan James decides to opt out. He put out a statement citing health concerns with a family member already being hospitalized with the virus, and then he had a newborn that was born back in May, and so for him, it's just in his best interest to sit out for him and his family. Obviously it's a huge blow, and Broncos fans, I mean, he's already not popular with Broncos country because of how much he didn't play given his contract, and Vic Fangio certainly didn't help matters by questioning his mental and emotional health when it came to his knee. I think I'm in the minority here. Yes, it sucks. I completely understand what he's doing here. I get it. And if it's truly for these reasons, which I think it is, and because if he's lying and he just doesn't want to play, then that's just okay. This guy's he's a turd. But I listen, it sucks, yes. I don't mind it though. I'm not going to give him backlash for it. If that's why he's sitting out, totally get it. Because if it was anybody else, if this was Dalton Reisner saying these same things, we'd be like, okay, fine. The only reason people hate it and hate him is because he didn't play last year, and which is understandable. But I mean, everybody's pain threshold and pain tolerance is different. For him, if he had questions about his knee, I mean, it's hard to doubt a guy when he has questions about his knee. So, or any part of his body that feels hurt. So that's kind of where I'm at with it, where I stand. Where were you at with the news yesterday?
I mean, I guess all you can really do is look back at those last 5 games and say, well, the offensive line wasn't that bad. Drew Lock did help the
They
offensive
still went
line.
7-9 practically without him. So I
Right.
mean,
Yeah, and they went 4-1 in those last 5 with Drew Lock without him. So I mean, I think it's more of we gotta wait. Honestly, a lot of it now, unfortunately, but a lot of it does fall on Garrett Bowles, and a lot of it does fall on how this offense is built. As far as the play calling, is it if they focus on going for deep shots, and this offense and the play calling is built around taking deep shots down the field, they're gonna be in trouble. If they more just go, okay, we're gonna run the ball a lot and we're gonna get a lot of dink and dunks, a lot of quick, maybe quick slants, quick outs, whatever, and we'll once in a while maybe have a rollout with Drew Lock to where then we can go and take a deep shot. That's going to have to be the offense because Drew Lock won't have the time for Sutton or for Hamler, even KJ Hamler with his speed. He won't have the time to take deep shots for those guys. I mean, unless he's able to move around and do some magical things like Mahomes does, they won't have the time to take those deep shots. So the offense is going to look a lot like a classic Broncos offense. A lot of running, play action, bootlegs. If they do that, they'll be fine. And Drew Lock can do that. So I think that's where they're going to have to go for. Maybe next season when they do get Juwan James back, when they do replace Bowles, improve the offensive line a little bit more, then at that point maybe you can kind of let Drew Lock loose a little bit more. But and look, that's also beneficial for Drew Lock entering his second season too. You want to make it easy on him. You don't want to put it all on him. So maybe this is a blessing in disguise to where you're saying, okay, well, we're going to focus more on the run game now. We're not going to go all pass happy. We're going to stick with our 2, star potential running backs, and we're going to maybe, quick passes to Sutton and Judy. And look, Judy's great in the slot. Judy might get, 80 to 100 catches this season if that's the case, because he's a guy that can work the middle of the field, work the slot, and if that's, if he plays well, he's going to get a lot of catches because that's going to be a lot of the quick, the quick targets for Drew Lock. So that's probably I'm not hitting the panic button because they went 4-1 without Juwan James. But I'm also kind of changing my offense if I'm the Broncos.
Yeah, if you're smart, if you're Pat Shermer, you definitely have to make those adjustments because these Denver Broncos, they cannot afford to have anybody go down on the offensive line, because if someone gets hurt, you're royally screwed. Now Elijah Wilkinson was activated off the PUP, even though he was just placed on it like last week. So I mean, obviously, I guess he's fine. Maybe they just did that more out of precaution for him. But I mean, at this point, like we said, I mean, on paper, it's a huge loss, but when you look at it from the eye test and what the evidence we had last year, he didn't play much. He played like 60 something snaps in the Broncos. I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
gonna say they did just fine, but they won 7 games without him. So and Drew Lock went 4-1, like you said, without him. So, but if you're Pat Shermer, yes, you have to do better. You have 2 running backs, use them in the running game.
Yep.
You know, make sure you put them in favorable positions on offense. You're not, we don't want Lock throwing 35 to 40 times a game. Ideally, in a perfect world, keep that between 22, 25. Let's get him around 250, 300 yards a game. Let's give Melvin Gordon and Philip Lindsay a combined 30, 40 touches a game. Let's try and get that going.
And
somehow.
that's probably not what Bronco fans want to hear, because we've been desperately wanting big plays down the field and all that. But at this point, when you don't have the ability to have Drew Lock sit back there for more than 2 seconds, you got to change your offense. And can they win by playing like that? By playing a lot of dink and dunk, a lot of running the ball? Yeah, of course. Look at Peyton Manning. I mean, that's exactly the type of offense that you're gonna have to run. Quick passes.
Well, you still have a good defense too,
and you still have a good defense.
You have
So
to rely on them more now.
Does that take maybe their ceiling to maybe hitting 11 wins, down to maybe 10? Or maybe 9. Yeah, I think their ceiling is probably at 10 now. I think that takes it a game down. I don't think they can.
8 or 9.
I don't think they can win 11 anymore. And that was best case scenario. If everything clicked, that's for me. That was 11 wins. Now I'm gonna say it's probably at 10. I think they can hit 10 games. I do. Looking at their schedule.
No.
And
it depends on who else opts out too, by the way.
Right, right. And we do have a deadline. What is it, Thursday?
Yeah, it's like a floating deadline. It's like either Wednesday or Thursday. They're just kind of like, one of the two.
Yeah.
You
so,
can choose.
and here's also another thing too, and we can't expect. And I know a lot of people are on the Drew Lock bandwagon and saying, oh, look at what Mahomes did his second year. Look at what Carson Wentz did their second year. But they also had a full offseason.
Mahomes, the quarterback you wanted to trade, right? Just clarifying.
There's context to that. But if he's not gonna have one of those seasons because he doesn't have an off season, right? He hasn't had an off season. So I think really I think this is more of I don't want to say a throwaway season, but this is a full-on developmental season. And if you can get these guys, Judy, Hamler, Noah Fant, Drew Lock, if you can give these guys a little bit more experience, then that's best case scenario, right? Best case scenario is you get to play all 16 games and those guys get experience and they stay healthy. So then next season, that's the year where all of those expectations that we had maybe going into this season, we can push those expectations to next season. And that I think will be something where, and it's not going to happen. The second Drew Lock throws a pick or the second he has a bad game, everyone's going to start panicking and losing their minds because they're Bronco fans. But I mean, to any Bronco fans that are listening, when that does happen, when game 1 comes out and he maybe doesn't have, he doesn't throw for 300 yards, maybe he has 200 yards, a touchdown and a pick, and they lose. Let's not panic here. He's entering really his first full season, no off season, and as great as these weapons and as exciting as these weapons are, one of them's in their third year, one of them's in their second year, 2 of them are in their first year. So, like, what do you really expect? Jerry Jeudy isn't.
No off season and new offensive
And
coordinator.
a new offensive coordinator. Yeah, Jerry Jeudy isn't going to go out there in his rookie season and put up 80 catches for 1,200 yards. It's not going to happen. Sutton did that in his second season. What did Sutton do his rookie season? Okay, maybe we can expect
700 yards,
something like that for Jerry Jeudy. Maybe 600 to 700 yards. KJ Hamler, maybe like 400 yards. Noah Fant entering his second season. Okay, maybe he should have a little bit of a jump, but again, no offseason. So what did he have last season? Like 600 yards?
Yeah,
okay,
around there.
Maybe right around the same because you're adding maybe a couple of more weapons that are a little bit better than what you had last year. So maybe around the same, maybe a couple more touchdowns this season is something that we can expect. But other than that, there's not going to be a massive jump. The only guy that I could see having a massive jump is Sutton because he's entering his 4th year. He's more of a veteran now. That's someone that you can say, okay, he should at least be just as good, if not better, and be maybe a top 10 receiver in the league. Other than that, there should not be any other expectations for this offense. All expectations for the offense should be pushed to next year because of the situation.
And that's why I think they get a pass. And I think that's why I'm pretty much giving a pass to every Colorado team except for the Rockies because I need to win that bet. So
hey, they're looking good.
Lose. So I know, of course, when I make a bet, they look good. But hey, it's the Rockies though, so they can look good now. But we know when they look good now, come playoff time, that what are you doing?
I'm taking a picture. My puppy decided to tear his bed open. He has 2 socks in here that he stole, and it's a disaster. I'm gonna be sending it to my fiance here, and she's gonna lose her mind. I am gonna lose my mind. I was gonna cuss. I was gonna lose my mind here right after we got off because I'm fuming right now.
You're fumigating?
Yes,
I can see it. You fumigating from.
So,
but no,
yeah,
everybody a pass. I'm giving Drew Lock a pass. Like, you can't expect a second-year quarterback who is missing a whole offseason, getting yet another offensive coordinator to go out and play well. If he plays bad this season, obviously I want him to play good, but I'm just giving this team a pass. Before the season, I had them at 8-8. You said your ceiling now is at 10 games. I think my ceiling now is at 8 games, 9 games for them. And it also depends on, what other teams do, who opts out, injuries, of course. And this is all assuming that we're getting through the entire season, okay? Like, I don't even know if we're going to get to that point yet with everything that's going on with baseball. The NFL didn't necessarily do a bubble. So it's going to be interesting to see how everything plays out. But I'm giving the Broncos a pass. And as far as the Juwan James thing goes, I mean, I wish them all the best. Hopefully the Broncos don't get hurt on the offensive line if we play this whole thing out because they can't afford that. But again, this just puts way more pressure on the defensive side of the ball. They've got to be great, at least top 5 for this team to at least want to not only be winning, but even have a chance at sniffing the playoffs. And, part of me, and I threw this out on Twitter yesterday, part of me is kind of hoping like, okay, so Juwan James opts out. So that means his contract is paused for this year. And essentially he's under contract for another year. If Philip Lindsay opts out this year, then technically we get to keep him another year.
Here's the thing. So, you know what? I'm actually kind of, and Kemp was kind of joking about it. But can they seriously can we just cancel the season? Because here's the thing. Then we could have Drew Lock for an extra year, technically, right? Mm-hmm. We don't have to pay him.
It's your option.
Right, exactly. We don't have to pay him for an extra year. So
now yes, you're getting him for an extra year, but that's also a year he didn't play for you. So
right.
But
here's the thing: would you rather waste one of those years on a pandemic year, or would you rather have one of those years in the future when he's a year older? So, I don't know. Look, here's the thing with this. Why
do you think Bill's probably telling all of his pros, like, "Hey guys,
right,
fine, sit out."
I don't think we're gonna have an NFL season. I really don't. I think once the MLB shuts down, which they'll probably shut down here soon, which bails you out. I don't think it's possible for a league to, continue their season right now unless they are in a bubble. And in the NFL, you can't do that. So, unfortunately for the MLB and the NFL, you can't do what the NHL and the NBA are doing. By the way, shout out to the Avs. Did you see that? I couldn't watch it because but did you see the last like 5 seconds of that game?
I didn't watch any of that game, and I turned it on. I was like, yeah, I'll see what these guys are doing. And I literally turned it on as they were reviewing everything.
Okay.
And so I didn't see it happen live, but I saw the replay.
That was
which
incredible.
Is cool. I mean, you don't see that happen a lot.
Yeah,
so.
What the NHL is doing with the round robin and basically the top 4 seeds, because you got the West and the East in 2 different bubbles, right? And so the top 4 seeds all play each other to figure out who's going to kind of figure out the seeding between 1 through 4. The rest of the teams who were invited are all fighting for a playoff spot. That's cool. I like what the NHL are doing. I kind of wish the NBA did it because I don't like how Memphis did all that work to get 3-4 games ahead for the 8th spot, and they were probably going to lock up the 8th spot in the regular season if it had continued. And now all you have to do is get within 4 games, and you have a playing game with them. Like that's a little kind of unfair.
The league just has to see Zion throw down dunks, as if we don't see those alley-oops 5 to 10 times a game. Show me something else, ESPN. Can he do anything else? Anything? I get he can dunk. Thank you. I see that. Can he do anything else?
He's literally Blake Griffin.
I rest my case. It comes off as hate for me. Like I hate Zion. I don't hate Zion. He's a good player. I'm not saying that he sucks. I just think he's overrated. I think he can dunk. He's a great athlete. But other than that, I mean, he can't create his own shot. He's not out there shooting like Steph Curry. He's not out there shooting like Paul George. I mean, he can hit a set 3. But I mean, he's a dunker. That's all he is right now.
Well, I want to say he's
Blake
just.
Griffin.
I want to say he's just a dunker. He's Blake Griffin, but a better post player. Because he and
does he have like footwork though, or is he just muscling past guys? He's muscling past guys.
No, well, I guess, but you can't take away from his efficiency. Like he is extremely.
He better be efficient. He's shooting 2 feet from the basket every time. He better make that.
Against Memphis, he had 23, 7, and 5 assists.
What is his shot chart? Give me the shot chart.
It doesn't matter. He's getting 23 points.
Layups and dunks. Yes.
So what? He's getting there. No one can stop him. If you can't get stopped, you don't say the same crap about Giannis, and you don't hate on Giannis. All he does is dunk the ball.
Giannis can actually step out and shoot threes more consistently than he can. Yes, he can.
What is he shooting right now?
I would say he's probably mid-30s right now. How many threes do you see Zion?
He's not even mid-30s. Yes. Half of Giannis's jumpers are line drives to the net. They don't even hit the rim. They just go right to the net, and they're just line drives. Stop it. Did you watch that game against Boston? All he did was run up the middle of the court, catch the ball, not even having to jump, and just dunked it. That's all he does, and he's gonna win MVP. And his team is 30%. And his team is favored to win the NBA Finals, or maybe not favored, but to get to the NBA Finals. So if you can average 23 to 30 points a game, and all you're doing is dunking,
it's not going to work in the playoffs. Just like it doesn't work for Giannis, though.
Maybe
we'll
see.
We've seen that. It didn't work for LeBron, did it? Eventually, you got to shoot a jumper, Zion. Eventually.
LeBron could also shoot 35%. LeBron was a much better shooter than Giannis was when
his arms are so big, they're gonna poke him in his eyelid because he's so muscular.
We'll see in the playoffs. And again, I agree with you. I don't think, but I do think Milwaukee will get to the NBA Finals. I think Boston is close, and we'll see. That's gonna be the series. It's gonna be Boston, Milwaukee. But if he can get them to the NBA Finals. Can they win it? I don't know. We'll see. But that's what they have Middleton for. He can hit threes.
I was watching Colin Cowherd last night before I went to bed, and I want you to know he feels the same way about Chris Middleton that I do. Because I think he went like 1 for 6 down the stretch, Middleton did. Oh, shocker. Chris Middleton misses open shots. Look at that. He's not there to help out Giannis when he needs it most. Because you want to know why? Because he's not a star. He's not.
Where was Paul George last year in the first round?
Where was Paul George this year? Shooting amazing.
See. We'll see when he gets to the playoffs, but I have a feeling Kawhi's going to have to carry his ass.
He had to play with Russ, okay? Russ just takes the ball and runs with it. And you just never see it again. Once you pass it to Russ, it's a black hole where no one goes to see the ball.
We'll see when the playoffs start, and we'll watch Paul George just slowly disappear, and we can just all wave goodbye.
I hope with all of my being that the Clippers and Bucks play in the finals, just so we can see Paul George drop 30 a night, and we see Chris Middleton go 1 for 9 and drop 10 a night.
Paul George is not going to average 30 a game in the playoffs.
You're so disrespectful to him. It's not even funny.
He's a good player, but he can't be your number one guy. He's a solid 2.
Solid 2. He's an excellent 2.
And he's gonna and Kawhi's gonna have to pick up the slack in the playoffs when it comes down to stretch time. The last couple of minutes of the game. Yes.
It's not true.
Yes. In the playoffs, Paul George tends to disappear.
True. Oh my god.
And we can all do the Damian Lillard goodbye while he falls apart against the Lakers.
What is Paul George's averages in the playoffs? I'm curious.
Kemp, I wouldn't say PG is out of his prime. I just think he disappears. He's a good player through 3.5 quarters, and in the regular season, he can be your number one guy. But when it comes down to the playoffs, he's always been same with when he was in Indiana. Same thing happened when he was in Oklahoma City.
This is the last 5 years he's been in the playoffs. Okay, in 13-14 when he was with Indiana, age 23, he was averaging 23 points. Then it went to 27 points, 28, 25, 29. How is it disappearing?
Well, you can't close games out.
Oh, now he can't close games out.
What I just said. No, what did I just say? He disappears in the last 5 minutes of the game.
How many times was it versus Miami, though? Okay, 13-14 was definitely Miami. 15-16 was probably Cleveland.
And a guy in LeBron James stepped up in the last 5 minutes and closed them out.
God. Man is averaging 20, 23,
when it comes down to it, Kawhi is going to have – when it comes down to it in the last 5 minutes, Kawhi is going to have the ball, and he's going to be the one closing games out.
28, 8-7, 28, 8-3. That was last year. 4 if you round up. Unbelievable. What is Middleton's average? Well, would you pull that up in the playoffs?
That's what I'm saying.
Like 4,
I'm saying they're the same guy.
And a half. That is not true.
They're the same guy. True. They're the same exact guy.
It's so not true. They're not even on the same level. Chris Middleton's like a top 30 player. Paul George is like a top 15 player.
I don't know if I'd put Paul.
And Middleton's 30, by the way, in that. He might be 30B. Like how you have 1A, 1B? Yeah, there's 30A and there's 30B, and that's Chris Middleton. Writing in pencil. That's because it can be erased because he's not great.
We'll see when the playoffs hit.
We will.
Kawhi is gonna have to carry Paul George on his back in the last couple minutes of games.
Kawhi's a top 5 player, as is Giannis, so they're both gonna get carried.
And here's the thing, that's what I'm saying. If Kawhi's the number one guy, Paul George is fine, and he's gonna be really good.
Here's your question then: who do you trust more when either team's star isn't playing well? Who do you trust more to carry the other team?
Both of them. I'm saying they're even. It's a push. I like both of them the same amount. I'm not hating on Paul George. I'm not.
Sounds like it.
I'm saying Middleton is the same as basically Paul George. They're the same guy.
Weird. That is just false. That is completely just false, and you know it's false because in your heart of heart, you do not believe that.
Look at their numbers; they do the exact same. Paul George had a great year last year. He had a great year, but again, like I like what Colin Cowherd says is take your worst year, take your best year, take them out. That's who you are. The other years, that's who you are. He is a 23 a game, 6 rebound. 3 assist type of guy, same as Middleton. They are the same exact player.
I can't with you. I just can't. Paul George's out here putting up 30 and 40 points a game, scoring the last 8 points in the fourth quarter in crunch time.
Yeah, do that in the playoffs instead of against a team that's not going to make the playoffs.
Chris Middleton's not even doing it now, let alone the playoffs. That's the issue here.
He had a good game in the last game. Yeah,
Did he?
He like 28.
Yeah, but he missed all the shots down the stretch, which per usual.
Did you watch the game?
Chris
Do you know that
Middleton.
for sure?
I'm relying on what Colin Cowherd said because he's the truth. He wouldn't lie to me like you're lying to the people by saying that Middleton is equal to Paul George. First you want to trade Patrick Mahomes and Russell Wilson.
That's different.
Slander James Harden all the time. Now you're slandering Paul George.
Against Boston, Middleton had 18, okay, but he had 8 assists, 5 rebounds. So, you know, he does the other things really well.
Garbage time number.
Garbage time. That game was close. That was against Boston.
All garbage time. All garbage time.
There was no garbage time in that game.
It's all garbage time.
And then against Houston, they did lose. But he had 27, 12 rebounds, 4 assists. Shot 10 of 18. 3 of 8 from 3. It's not bad.
I just don't understand your logic. I just don't get it. But you know what? We will see once the finals come, and
the Clippers won't make it to the NBA Finals.
Oh my God, the Lakers aren't beating them.
I think the Lakers beat them.
Oh my God, we have to wrap because I'm gonna pop a blood vessel in my face if I keep yelling.
Until someone beats LeBron in the playoffs, he's going to the finals. But until I see it happen, I'm picking him to the NBA Finals.
Well, you're gonna see it. So
he has not lost in the playoffs in 9 years. Last year doesn't count. He didn't make it. So he has not missed. He has not lost.
What about losing in the finals?
Well, he's gotten to the finals. What I'm saying, he's gotten to the finals every year that he's made the playoffs.
Okay.
So until someone beats him in the first 3 rounds, he's getting, in my mind, he's getting to the NBA Finals. Whether he wins the NBA Finals, I don't know. We'll see. Depends on who he plays and how much help he has.
All right. Well, we'll see.
Playoff LeBron is a different type of player. People don't people forget that.
So is Paul George. Different type of player.
Yeah, exactly. Different type of player. He shrinks.
Oh my God. I can't with you. I'm done. That's going to do it for us today on the podcast. We thank you guys for listening. Or if you watched via YouTube, we appreciate you watching as I got very angry when Zion's name was brought up. I promise I don't hate the guy. I just think he's a little overrated. That's it. That's just it. And then I just can't with Brandon and his Chris Middleton stuff. You make me want to hate Chris Middleton. I hope you know this. You make me want to hate him. And that's on you, okay? That's on you. That is your doing. I'm sure Chris is a great guy. But whenever I see him, I hope for failure. And that's just wrong. That's just wrong of me to do. That's going to do it for us today on the Sports Podcast. For Brandon Stoll, I'm Stephen Priest. Again, this has been the Behind the Glass Sports Podcast. We will catch you guys next time.